OFM, continuously striving to be the best community radio in Namibia. The voice of Oraimo.
Well, good morning once again, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I'm pleased to talk to Mr. Frederico Links, the editor of Namibia Fact Check. Mr. Frederico, thank you for your time and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to your listeners.
Now, we have been having so many misinformation in regards to the COVID-19. So today we would like you to tell us more about the lies about COVID, about positive test after vaccination. So can you please explain how effective the different vaccines are with percentages in the order from most effective to least effective?
The data that we have on the vaccines, so there are seven vaccines that I think I might have in the podcast might have said 8, but they're actually 7 approved, emergency use approved vaccines out there. So in terms of the most effective, the 2 vaccines that aren't available, or the vaccines that aren't available in Namibia, the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine and the Moderna vaccines, are the most, according to the data that is available, most effective. And they are sort of in the mid to high 90%. The vaccines we have here are sort of mid-level, the Sinopharm and the AstraZeneca vaccines, sort of in the high 70s, 80%. So they are still highly effective in terms of preventing, hospitalization and people actually developing an infection or needing hospitalization, needing oxygen, and ultimately dying. So they're still in that range. So at the moment, the data for the least effective points to the Sinovac vaccine, which is another Chinese vaccine, which has sort of just over 50%, an efficacy rate of just over 50%, according to the data that is available. Which is actually, sort of just above the threshold that would be required for approval as an emergency use vaccine by the World Health Organization. So, in terms of what we have here, Sinopharm and AstraZeneca, we have pretty good vaccines here. Sinopharm has an efficacy rate of over 79%, almost 80%, and AstraZeneca is about similar to that. So I think we have pretty good vaccines here.
Okay, so the next question is that what determines the country rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines?
I think things like the population size of a country under the COVAX facility are considered, and the infection rates and that sort of thing are considered in terms of who gets vaccines and what quantity of vaccines countries get. But I think at this point the most important consideration in vaccine rollout drives around the world, and especially on the continent, is actually the availability of vaccines. We've heard about vaccine iniquity, vaccine apartheid, which has become a very topical issue globally, where developed countries are hoarding vaccines, and developing countries such as ours and countries on the continent which are experiencing a third wave of infections at the moment. We don't have ready access to vaccines, which is problematic in terms of us being able to deal effectively with the ongoing pandemic and this current wave in not just in Namibia, but in at least I think about over 20 countries on the continent at the moment. So really it comes down to do we actually have access to doses? And the answer is no. I mean, we're trying to get vaccines in large quantities from various countries, not just from the COVAX facility, because I mean COVAX is not delivering at the pace that it was envisaged. And some are even saying that COVAX is failing. So I mean, I think at this point we have to say the most important consideration is having access to the required quantities of vaccine doses.
Okay, now in regards with just what you said now, sir, now is there something like a country getting a specific vaccine? Is there something like that? Like for us, for example, we have only AstraZeneca and the Sinopharm. So is there something like that? Like where does one country get a specific vaccine? Is there something like a specific vaccine for a specific country?
No, I don't think there's something like that. I mean, whatever is made available is what countries get. So, AstraZeneca has been is the most widely used vaccine across the world at the moment. I think most countries around it is being administered in most countries around the world. And I mean, Sinopharm, I think, is at the moment in use in about 50. I can't exactly remember how many countries AstraZeneca is used. The vaccine is used in at the moment. But Sinopharm, I think, is now being administered in about 55 countries. The final Sinopharm vaccine around the world. So it's availability. It's what's available, how many doses are available. And where they can be distributed quickly is what is happening at the moment. So it's not that. I mean, the Sinopharm vaccine, the 100,000 doses that were received from China, these doses did not come through the COVAX facility. This was a government-to-government donation from the Chinese government. But I think we can expect more Sinopharm vaccines now that Sinopharm has emergency use listing from the World Health Organization. We can expect more Sinopharm vaccines to come through the COVAX facility, as possibly some other vaccines. I mean, so it depends on where a government tries to procure vaccines from.
Yeah, because
I know the Namibian government has approached the Russians as well for the
Pfizer.
Gamaleya or Sputnik 5 vaccine.
Okay, so because I actually thought that it depends to the cost also. So it's just the availability.
Yeah. So I mean, the COVAX facility is supposed to make the vaccines very affordable.
Okay.
But I mean, COVAX is falling short at the moment. So, governments all over the continent, Namibia included, are going wherever they can get extra doses. So it's not just cost; it's availability. I think that is at this point in time the most important consideration. Where can we actually get the required numbers of doses that we need? at this point in time.
Because I understand that I just read a certain article yesterday that says that the US is actually donating, I don't know if it's 80 million dosages of vaccines, which 60 million is AstraZeneca to other less developed countries or something like that.
Yeah, so they've now committed to donating 75 million. The Biden administration had sort of aimed to donate 80 million, but it seems they'll only be donating 75 million vaccine doses, which they've been hoarding. And this is the problem. So, I mean, you know, but that is 75 million doses that will be sent to various parts of South America, Africa, and Asia. So, I mean, if you divide that up between the three continents, that's about 25 million per continent.
Yeah.
You know, we need way more than that. Way more than that. At the moment, I think, I mean, I think about as of 10 June, only about 1% of Africa's population has been vaccinated. So you can see, I mean, if only 1% at this point has been vaccinated, you know, we need a lot more vaccine doses than what is sort of trickling through from various parts of the world and through the COVAX facility. You know, at the moment, I think we're sort of, with the vaccine doses we have, we could probably achieve something like a 5% vaccination when these vaccines run out, which is, you know, if we want to reach herd immunity of around 70 to 80% of the population, you know.
So now, in your own opinion, do you think that Namibians are up to being vaccinated? How far are we with this whole vaccination situation?
You know, so it's picked up, I think, over recent weeks. But I mean, you also saw the reports about 2/3 of Namibians rather believing in prayer being an effective treatment for COVID-19 rather than the vaccines, which shows that there appears to be a high level of skepticism, of hesitancy around the vaccines. And most Namibians have said more than half, I think, have said that they're not going to get vaccinated, which is a problem. If we want to get out of this, if we want to get back to some sort of normal, then we have to get vaccinated. It's voluntary. People can choose not to, but, you know, if only half of the population is vaccinated, we won't get to herd immunity, which means we'll continue to go through cycles of infection, and you know, have to continue dealing with COVID-19 for the foreseeable future, which is problematic. Namibians really need to understand, you know, that the vaccines are a way out of this emergency and out of this health crisis, which is also an economic crisis, which is also a social crisis. So, you know, a lot more has to be done to get Namibians to understand that this is something we need to do.
Yeah, because somebody said that I was just chatting to, just said that they don't want to take the experimental vaccine. He calls it experimental vaccine because they don't know what's going to, you know, to happen in 10 years. And also the FDA's quick decision and science may not be fully aware of the long-time side effects. And they said that it has nothing to do with conspiracy theories. So again, what is your personal point of view in regards with that? Like, somebody calls it an experimental vaccine due to the fact that it was so developed, the time frame that it has been developed, it was so short. That's why people are a little bit skeptical about getting vaccinated. So what is your take on that?
I mean, that at this point, that is a totally uninformed position. I mean, you can get the data on every one of the vaccines. It's available and accessible online. You can see what's in the vaccines. You can see what the methods and methodologies and the technologies are that have been used to make these vaccines. You can see where the processes have been sped up. It's all explained online by various sources, by the Johns Hopkins University COVID-19 web pages. They have actually the best explanation for me as to how it was possible to develop these vaccines so fast. So I mean, that is at this point in time, that's a position that is of somebody who is uninformed, who's not making an effort to find out actually what the facts are, when those facts are actually out there. Yes. And you know, this is the problem. Namibians aren't going out there and actually finding and accessing the credible sources to see what all of the questions that people are asking at this point in time. All of them have been answered and you can find the answers on the World Health Organization website. You can find the answers on the CDC website. You can find the answers on the US FDA website. You can find the answers on the Johns Hopkins University website, COVID-19 pages. There are various other sources, of course, that I also look to and that also provide valuable information. But I mean, those are sort of the Global Health Agency, the European Medicines Agency. All of this information, all the questions people have about vaccines at this point in time have already been answered. But the problem is that people aren't accessing this information.
The necessary information.
And that position that you just stated is very much influenced by conspiracy theories. Yes. That person can say, yeah, it's not because of conspiracy, but that is a position that comes out of the conspiracy theories that we've been seeing circulating, and especially in Namibian WhatsApp groups and WhatsApp groups around the world. So, I mean, that is what the conspiracy theories have done. They've implanted this idea of the vaccines being experimental, and you know, various other things as well. Made monkey cells and aborted fetuses, tissue, and all sorts of things in there, you know, microchips. These are all part of the conspiracy theories, and this experimental tag. And this is very much, as I said, an uninformed position at this stage, when all the information is actually available that should assure people as the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. So I mean, I'm not going to hesitate and say, you know, that person who said that really needs to go and access the information. It is available.
Okay. So, why are there only two types of vaccines unavailable in Namibia? Why do we not opt for other types of vaccines such as Pfizer and vaccine? I believe the question is saying that why are there only two types of vaccine available in Namibia? That is now the AstraZeneca and the Sinopharm.
Okay, so there are two types, and there are 4 types of vaccines, and we have 2 types. The Sinopharm vaccine is sort of an inactivated virus vaccine, which is the oldest type of vaccine out there, which is the traditional vaccine. And then you have a weakened vaccine virus, which is the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now there are 7 approved vaccines for emergency use listed by the World Health Organization. So the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and the various other vaccines, the Sputnik 5 vaccine and so forth. I mean, the Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna vaccines, I mean, those companies are based in Europe and North America. So they're serving their home markets first. And you know, they have agreements the US government, the Canadian government, and the EU to supply them most of the doses that they manufacture. So that is why these vaccines aren't available here, because their first priority is to supply the countries in which they operate, in which they are based. They have contracts that are problematic in terms of ensuring that vaccines are equitably distributed around the world. But I mean, Johnson & Johnson is going to start manufacturing its vaccine in South Africa, and an mRNA a vaccine hub, which would be a manufacturing hub, is being explored to be set up in either South Africa, I understand, or in Rwanda, so that the vaccines such as the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines could be manufactured here in Africa for distribution on the continent. But I mean that won't be this year or next year. This could probably only happen in 2023 and so on. So I mean, it comes down to these vaccine manufacturers serving their home markets first, and only then afterwards will doses be made available and to other parts of the world.
So now they are just producing enough for their countries,
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think they're producing just enough for their countries. I mean, the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine are also available. I mean, I think in Egypt Egypt received a batch of the Pfizer vaccine. So it's also, there are some of these vaccines available for export to other countries, even to countries on this continent. But they are not enough. The quantities coming through are not enough to satisfy demand at this stage. And that will only happen once they've satisfied demand in their home markets, which is the EU and North America. And only then will we see, once those markets have been fully vaccinated or vaccinated to the point where doses are freed up, large numbers of doses are freed up, only then I think will we start seeing those vaccines become more available in our part of the world and other parts of the world.
Okay, because I feel like if we had a choice and they were they were being produced in high quantities, I think that every country will opt for either Pfizer or Moderna.
Yeah, at this point, yes. I mean, there are more than sort of 132 vaccines in some stages of development. So there are a lot more vaccines that are expected to come onto the market over the next few years. Many of the vaccines in development will fail, but many of them should make it through and become readily available. So I mean, we might have more choice, but at the moment we don't have that choice, and at the moment we do need more doses of high quality vaccines. And unfortunately, the situation is that those vaccines aren't accessible to us at this point in time.
Okay. And of course, the other question is that a number of countries have stopped the use of AstraZeneca for people under a certain age. Germany, the Philippines, and Australia are among countries restricting AstraZeneca use. Indonesia and DR Congo among non-European nations that suspended the use of the AstraZeneca that is we are using at the moment because it said that a few people have either have complications after they got their vaccine, which is those 2 shots, and it said to that the AstraZeneca cause blood clots. So if AstraZeneca cause blood clots, why are we still using it?
You see, this is the thing. I mean, this complication is a very rare complication. But I mean, health authorities are playing it safe. They're being overcautious, I think, and that is what many specialists in the field are also accusing. They're overly cautious. Because I saw a figures the other day that stated that I can't remember the country. I think it was some European country or somewhere, or Israel, I think might have been, or some of the other countries, where it basically found that 2 out of 4 million people vaccinated with the AstraZeneca vaccine had developed this complication of blood clots. So that's about 2 out of 4 million people. I mean, that's 1 out of every 2 million people. It's very rare.
Yeah.
So the fear has tended to be overblown. The fear of this vaccine. And this is what health authorities, global health authorities, have also said. But I mean, they're playing it safe. Nobody wants, if this vaccine is further, of course, is administered widely and more blood clots, more cases of blood clotting and other complications emerge, then of course health authorities will have to face the consequences and liability for these sorts of complications. And that's what they want to avoid. So they're taking an overly cautious approach to this. But I mean, all the indications are that this complication, this blood clotting condition, is very rare. I think in North America, the complications, because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine also showed the same, also produced the same complication, the blood clotting. And there it was 6 people out of 6 million at that point had developed this condition. So I mean, it's something like 1 out of 1 million. So I mean, you can see how very rare this condition is. But you can understand if global health authorities, if health authorities in various countries, are playing it safe, are playing it overly cautious, and would rather limit or restrict the use of this vaccine to certain age groups. We haven't had a case of this reported, I think, in Namibia yet.
Oh, so we haven't had the cause of blood clots by the AstraZeneca yet here in Namibia. Yeah.
We haven't had a single case reported yet.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, thousands and thousands of people have now taken this vaccine. So I mean, you have a choice. You can take the Sinopharm vaccine, or you can take the AstraZeneca vaccine. And knowing that the possibility exists that you could develop this condition, this blood clotting condition, but that it is a very rare condition, according to what the evidence suggests.
So now the last question is that the UAE and the Bahrain will now offer a third shot of China's Sinopharm vaccine. Now this comes after a group of people didn't develop antibodies even after 2 doses of the vaccine. Now I believe that this third shot is a booster shot. So now what happens when again they administer this booster shot and they fail to produce or to develop antibodies? Then what happened afterwards?
Well, I mean, then there are serious questions to answer about the efficacy of this vaccine. I mean, the data suggests almost 80% effectiveness or efficacy.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, but let's see. I mean, it's some people. It's not not everybody.
Yeah.
So it's once again a situation of like the condition, the complications with the AstraZeneca vaccine. It might not be required. A booster shot, that third shot, might not be required for everybody. It might just be certain people,
a certain group of people
might need a third shot. So it might not be. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated. I've had my 2 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine. And people around us are getting COVID-19. We're sort of I'm feeling safe with this vaccine. Let me put it that way. So if it's necessary in future, if they say, look, it's best if you get a third shot, I'll go for the third shot, for the booster shot. So this is still something that they're looking at in terms of really how effective the vaccines are. So I mean, we should know by the end of this year in terms of what the data says.
Okay,
I think the Sinopharm vaccine, the final data will only be available towards the end of, I think, November this year. So then we should know.
Okay, so now this does the developmental of antibodies. Now let's talk about that. Do you go for a test and for the antibodies, or how do one find that I haven't developed, even after I have taken my 2 jabs of the vaccine, I still haven't developed the antibodies? How can one find it out?
Well, I mean the worst way you can find out is if you actually develop an infection. But I mean, there are tests they can do. I don't know if they can do them here in Namibia, but there are tests that can be conducted to see what the antibody levels are in your system. So, I mean, as I said, I don't know if we can do those tests here. So, or if after 2 shots I now develop an infection, then it's clear that I haven't built up the required antibodies to fight off this COVID-19, which means I probably then have to get a booster shot. But I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully, the 2 shots will be enough for me, and my wife and so on. So, yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, it's good to be hopeful like that, because I also wouldn't hope for a third a booster shot.
Yeah.
Mr. Frederico Links, it was a pleasure talking to you today, and I'm sure that my listeners were also pleased and just drawn to their TVs because of this conversation. I think it has cleared a lot of misinformation that has been shared all over social media. Do you have any last words at all for our listeners today?
Yeah. Look, I mean, all I always encourage people to do is all of what I've just said is available, accessibly available on the websites, on the web pages of the various global health agencies I've mentioned. The World Health Organization, the European Medicines Agency, the
CDC
US
as well.
FDA, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Johns Hopkins University COVID-19 web pages. All of this information, all the questions you have about the vaccines have to a large extent been answered by these credible sources. The information is there, the answers are accessible, the English is simple. If English is not your first language, the explanations are simple. And you can go from one to the other and see if these answers align with each other, if everybody is saying roughly the same thing. And then to see, all right, so everybody is saying this, all these health authorities are saying this. So this must be true. And that's how you get to the facts, by assessing what the credible sources are saying, and they are out there and they have this information. What you're seeing in your WhatsApp groups, especially these days, are mostly lies. At this point in time, what we're seeing coming through WhatsApp is mostly falsehood. So if somebody is still following advice from some anonymous post in a WhatsApp group, I don't know what to say to them. I mean, at this point, we really ought to be more aware of what's happening in this polluted information space that WhatsApp has become, especially WhatsApp. So, I mean, I encourage people, please, there are credible sources. The answers are out there. At this point, you shouldn't be taking medical advice from some anonymous post in a WhatsApp group.
Yes,
really,
indeed.
This shouldn't be happening at this point in time.
Mr. Frederick Collins, thank you so much once again for chatting to OFM. It was a pleasure.
It's always my pleasure, and I look forward to being on your show again.
Well, there was Mr. Frederick Links. He is the editor of Namibia Fact Check. Now, when he talks, he knows what he's talking about because he is the editor of the Namibia Fact Check. This is the place where you go to whenever you have had some misinformation or any information at all that gives you worries or that scares you, just to make sure that you have the right information. Please do go to the Namibia Fact Check just to make sure that you have the right information. Now, let's not forget that even after getting your 2 shots, you can still get infected, but at least you will be somehow protected because you have taken that shot. So please, let's go out in numbers and get vaccinated just to make sure that we live into a free virus Namibia. Umbheke